Hi everyone, I'm Paul Kankowitz, and this is the weekly update for my 2D PvP game with grappling hooks. I started this week off by adding a temp level select screen so I could easily run various levels, including the test levels I made before. This allows me to quickly and easily test things while keeping the game flow the same. I then worked on improving the player grapple guideline because the old one kept blending into the background and it was really bothering me. I spent some time working on a real level. This isn't final or anything, but it's much closer to what I envision a real level being. It has some good metrics for jumping and grappling, multiple loops to allow players to traverse in different directions, and a few traps to make things more interesting. I added in a way to damage other players by hopping on them, similar to Mario. Ouch! This might become a stun later, but I just needed some way for a player to win. Ouch! A large part of my time this week was spent writing, rewriting, and rewriting the script for player collision detection. Each time I rewrote the script, I had to test all the various use cases, and I would inevitably find I had broken or forgotten about one of them. I went back to the drawing board a few times here, and eventually drew out a test plan for all the different cases so I wouldn't miss anything. This proved invaluable with all the different rewrites. I can't tell you how much time I spent jumping on players over and over again in different ways. It was maddening, but I eventually got it to a good place and hopefully won't have to look at that script ever again. God dang it, I really gotta stop saying that. I also put in a little mechanic that allows the player to jump higher if they're holding down the jump button when they jump on another player's head. The idea here is that it gives players options so their opponents won't know exactly where they'll be after jumping on another player's head. I wanted to take a moment to explain how collision detection works in games for those that might not be familiar, and I couldn't think of a better way to do this than my world-renowned Paul's Paint procedure, patent pending. Now, you might think that objects move smoothly from point A to B, but in games, they actually teleport frame by frame. Normally this is fine, because our eyes can't tell the difference, but this poses issues for collision detection. For example, let's say we want to know when a player jumps on another player similar to how Mario jumps on enemies. You might think we'd check for a collision and see which character is on top. But if either player is moving fast enough in a given frame, they might actually move past each other, which would mean the player that was previously on bottom would now be on top. There are a few ways to solve this problem. The first thing you might try is to increase the bounding box size. This might work in a few cases, but won't actually solve the underlying issue. The next step, and something I tried in my game, is to draw a collision line from the player's current position with a length equal to the player's velocity this frame, then checking for collisions against that line. This works pretty well, but it can still have some issues in certain edge cases, as I was noticing when doing my testing. You could add more lines at various positions in the bounding box, but I ended up going with a different solution. My final solution was to divide the player's movement into multiple steps and test collision at each location. This is a lot more expensive in terms of performance, but I don't think that will be an issue for my game, since each level will be relatively small. There are other methods to solve this problem, such as continuous collision detection, but as I was looking into it, it seemed way more complicated than what I needed for this project. It's always important to tailor solutions to your specific project's needs. Ouch! Anyway, with all that taken care of, I added a player win screen. This isn't final, but it will definitely do for now. I added some debug to kill all players to make sure I'm handling the case where all players die on the same frame. I also found that I needed some way to test PvP without having other people constantly coming over, so I added some debug to randomize inputs for non-controller players. This makes them extremely erratic and very hard to jump on, but it'll do for test purposes. Adding that in also made me realize that I wasn't smoothly scaling the camera in and out, so I handled that too. It's still a bit jerky due to screen shake, but I plan on turning that down later. Ouch! Finally, the static boulders were bothering me a bit, so I made them rotate as they fall. I also made them spawn in invisible and quickly alpha in to handle the case where the player can see it when it spawns. Well, that's everything I did this week. Hopefully you enjoyed the update. I'll have even more progress to show off next week.